please welcome to the stage our guests. This is Sean King, SVP and General Manager of Commercial Enterprise at our partner Veritone, and Danny Tomsett, CEO and founder of UneeQ. Welcome. So, Sean, just before we get into this too much, just for anyone who's not familiar, what is Veritone? What do you do there exactly?
Well, Veritone, I lead their commercial enterprise team, and we are an AI-based platform, and we have a software called AIware that is an operating system for AI and allows us to provide a lot of solutions and applications and managed services for media and entertainment companies, inclusive of advertisers and brands, and that does include different forms of synthetic media.
Okay. And Danny, same question for you. What is UneeQ?
Yeah, we're also an AI company. We focus on brands as well, but our specific area at UneeQ is digital humans. So digital humans are our virtual personalities that could either be a digital twin, a copy of a real person, or a character that you create, whether that be realistic or more like a character like a Geico Gecko.
And I'm assuming you both worked together on projects, collaborated. Can you just maybe give an example of what that is, or what that looks like?
Sure. Do you want to give the Mahindra example?
Yeah, that's a good one. So, there's a lot of technology that comes together to create interactive experiences that you would either say are the predecessors to the Metaverse. And in fact, that's what we do a lot of work together on today, where we have a customer, Mahindra. If you're familiar with Mahindra, they create tractors, electric cars, amongst many things. And Anand Mahindra was the founding chairman, and he's retiring. So they were creating him as the brand ambassador that has a huge following in India, but also an incredible representative of the brand. And so we created digital Anand Mahindra. Our technology is focused around how he looks, his personality, the way that you can interact in real time, ask questions, and then we combine that with the Veritone technology, which brings authenticity to his voice. And when you think about licensing and other things, I'm sure we'll talk about, but those two things bring a digital Anand to millions of people to interact with.
Right. Yeah. So first big question, just to get it out of the way, and I don't think we're going to have a ton of skeptics in the room or anything, but there's lots of talk about the metaverse, emerging technologies, AI. Some might think it's fun, it's neat, it's cool, but maybe it's still way down the road. It's something that will just be, a fun sideshow. From your perspective, from your experience, why should brands start getting serious about the metaverse?
Well, I think there's first that squash the notion, like it's here today, and it's a way in which brands can communicate and engage with a much more personalized experience with the customer, which is a great way. So, brands need to start thinking, if they're not already, about what that strategy looks like, and how do you maintain that continuity in your brand, either from your brand's identity, your spokesperson, even the sonic identity, what your brand sounds like, talks to. You're going to want to have these same principles that we have in the real world that we expect out of our brands. And we're going to want to make sure that those are, when you're going into any one of these, digitally immersive worlds, that you're getting those same principles of sight, sound, and connection that you're able to maintain with your customers.
Right. And Danny, what do you say to the critics who are always critical of these things?
Yeah, I think I'll just extend on that. I think what we've seen is incredible behavior change over the last few years now. And so with behavior change, I think the way that we connect and relate to our target audiences has to change as well. And what the metaverse really presents is this exciting opportunity to evolve the way we connect with our audiences, whether that be through content or interaction. But even then, if you're heavily content focused, content's expensive, it's hard. So now we have these new AI technologies that can make that fast and efficient. So it really is like the perfect kind of compelling storm that brings everything together, both technology and demand, that really has set the stage for the metaverse.
So let's say I'm a brand, I have a logo or a spokesperson or a mascot that's well known. what would my first steps be just to kind of dip my toes in the metaverse waters, or just to start thinking about, okay, the future is coming. What should I do now? Where do I begin?
I'll give a real world example. I would say, and I pick on Capital One. So I'm sorry if anyone in the audience works on Capital One or does those. Come talk to me afterwards. I'm sorry. But they have one of the best taglines. I mean, we can all hear Jennifer Gardner say, "What's in your wallet?" Like it literally reverbs and echoes in that. But that's just, she's our ad ambassador, but like she is not a global ambassador for them, and she could be. So when you're not hearing Jennifer Gardner say "What's in your wallet" in Spanish, or "What's in your wallet" in French or German or Mandarin. When you're walking into a bank or you're walking in digital, you're not experiencing or interacting with her in any which way. And so when you think about, like, especially as more and more brands are starting to leverage some of the creator economy and tying themselves around influences and talents, we need to be able to connect and tap into their expanded entire audience. And that it's beyond a person's ability to be able to scale to meet with that type of the demand that the metaverse could provide in these digital environments. You have to be extensible in these things, which requires, frankly, AI and tech that we work on.
Yeah, there's so many great examples of when we think about what we do well to create emotional connection with our audience, and advertising and content. You've got to say a Geico gig. I'm going to use my own examples
here.
There
You
go. Right. All right, then save 15% off if you meet me and talk with me. And then you go to the website and it's a form that you now spend 15 minutes filling out, right? Sorry for the Geico people in the crowd. We don't have too many fans here, I don't think. But the point being is that we've now driven so much of our engagement online, yet the interaction, the personality, the way that we create emotional connection is lost. And this is such an incredible power. And it doesn't have to be even an existing brand ambassador. We do work with like Deutsche Telekom, who own T-Mobile here. And they created their own just digital human that has become a brand ambassador that represents, we help people understand complex things and make it simple, so you can actually get the best out of your experience, right? And just those types of engagements are very inspiring to me, because it's organizations and brands really think about how do we create emotional connection throughout the customer journey, not just at the top of funnel.
Right. And Danny, you're already kind of mentioning, but let's say, I don't have a Jennifer Garner or a Gecko. How do you go about creating this AI technology for today, but also kind of the future in mind, the metaverse in mind? Is there a better or worse way to go about, like, from the ground up creating these things?
Yeah, so I think obviously it's different for every brand, and because audience is different, also your existing assets and what you own. So if you already have brand ambassadors, then there's a really great platform to extend that now, as we've kind of highlighted in the examples. I think when you think about if you are creating an experience, actually we heard on main stage, a lot of the interactive experiences, it still has to be meaningful. In gaming, like if you're entering kind of those types of platforms, it's still got to be an engaging, fun, or meaningful experience. We've seen too many experiences where it's kind of pointless. Granted, a lot of experimentation is going on, but for most users, it's a one-time or an uneventful. It's kind of more playing into the hype cycle, as opposed to what we're doing a lot is really building on experiences that people really enjoy and take a lot out of. And that way you create a much stronger connection, and you actually create return usage as well, which I think is really important.
Yeah, I mean, just to elaborate a little bit more, I mean, it's infinite extensibility of most brands. I was to think like, well, what's the story that you're wanting to tell to your customers, or those, and how you want to go about it? Like, because in these digital environments, a lot about that person when they're coming into these things. You may understand, are they a past purchaser? What have they purchased? Should I be serving them, male clothing versus female clothing, or shoes versus sneakers? I mean, what should we be doing? But then there's a whole nother element. It's like, well, who should I be interacting with? I mean, this person is in New Zealand. Should I have a little bit of an Aussie accent, for a Kiwi accent from those? Or if they're in Boston, should it have a little bit more of that regional, like Northeastern dialect? I mean, these are new dimensions in which you can start thinking about how you want to engage with your customers.
Right.
And it's becoming more than just product and person, but you're actually being able to really provide a very personalized and localized experience for your customer.
Right. Is that, I know you mentioned with the Jennifer Garner speaking different languages, is that easy to do? Is it hard to do? If you want to, like you mentioned, if you want to expand and scale, you got to know different accents, different just demographics, different languages, different countries, different markets. Is it how possible is it to take the one digital character, let's say, and make the character available and able to communicate with everyone globally on a global level?
I mean, it's getting there to that point here. I mean, I can only speak for ourselves in those ones that we can work with about, I believe it's 22 very specific, where I could take your voice and have you be into those languages. There's a few different versions of mine, including a British version of me. That was mainly just for my wife. But it just being able to show those different use cases, it's becoming faster because, again, as more of these more adopted, it's the training data that's there that's creating it. It's allowing more of these to be created. I mean, there are a host of stock voices available that you can go and speak in very specific dialects and very, I'll say smaller ones. But if you start thinking about, the debate of English, Spanish, German, French, Mandarin, and some of the others, I mean, we were talking, there's coverage for 80+% of the speaking population of the world.
Wow, okay. All right. What types of opportunities are there when it comes to licensing an asset or, going into new worlds with your IP?
I love this question. The metaverse or these digitally immersive environments create, again, another way in which you can engage in content, and it can be something that you're progressing about. So there's a new way for a content creator, a network, a show to be able to have more abilities to be able to show that. We were really fortunate enough to work on a great opportunity with Fortnite a little while ago. They were one of the more progressive ones into this place, where they went ahead and created around Martin Luther King Day a very specific environment around Martin Luther King Park in DC. But instead of trying to recreate that digitally, they took the actual footage of Martin Luther King from CBS News Archives and had that. So while you're running around in the game, playing and doing these interactive things to learn about, civil rights and everything's going on here, you're actually watching, Dr. Martin Luther King give his speech in that same environment. So it's the real, Dr. Martin Luther King in this digital world. Wow. And it's going to create a really cool experience for someone to be able to engage with.
Right. Did you want to add anything, Danny, or is that more Sean's area?
That's more Sean's area, okay. Yeah, for sure. Obviously, it's the authenticity of what we're trying to create. Yeah. And I think this is one of the important challenges as you start thinking about technologies like deepfake and other things entering the market and AI is who has the rights and how do we ensure that it's protecting what we've done so well in Web 1 and Web 2 is how we protect digital rights, and that's flowing through now with companies like Veritone, so it's good. Right.
The human face, really complex. Human communication, really complex. I know you developed things that look, digital humans that look very lifelike. I'm just curious to know if in the metaverse, digital, there's no limit to your imagination. You could be a square on a circle that speaks like a Saturday morning cartoon that's just had 6 Coors Lights or whatever. You could do whatever you want. Why do you try and make it so human-like the voice, the look? Is there a benefit to that?
Yeah, there is. I mean, we've spent countless years in research and development and working with many, many brands. So we've got a pretty good understanding on, I guess in many regards, how you are aligning your digital human, your character to your audience, and what is, if you'll see a slide in a moment, and there's a digital human on this slide for the key takeouts. And what we did with her was we actually took several ethnicities and we combined them as an experiment to see if we combine multiple ethnicities into one human look, how that would change the appeal to the audience. Just so happens that she is by far one of the most successful digital humans ever created in a market. On all testing, she scores over 80% preference against others. So, which is kind of cool when you think about society and humanity, where we're going and what our preferences are, is for combined ethnicities. But with characters, again, depending on your audience, if you've got a young age, ultra realism tends to be very well aligned to brands that are probably more serious focused outcomes. So whether it be healthcare, financial services, things like that, or ultra realism where it's authentic to existing brand ambassadors. Matthew McConaughey or something like that,
Right.
And then characters still play a key role. So yeah, it's knowing your audience and testing, but you can create anything.
And I think with that, voice and the sound is kind of ubiquitous. That's consistent in these different environments. And obviously, we've taken the approach of photorealism in our avatars that we're working on from those. I do think there is a place, though, for a pixelated, a little bit more as well, depending on, if you just look at the gaming world, Minecraft and World of Warcraft, like both very successful games, one very realistic, one very pixelated. So I think that still is at a point now where there could be a little bit more preference. Obviously, our suggestion is going more the photorealistic standpoint on those, but it's one of those things too, regardless of whichever way you're going about those ones, the voice and the sound of those ones, that's ubiquitous. Like that has to be consistent across all.
Right. I'm just wondering, is there any other examples of, I know we've been talking about the concepts, the ideas a lot, but other examples of brands using some of this technology in ways that excites you or is interesting? And again, it can be a virtual influencer, it can be some digital brand ambassador. Like who's doing it really well, and what's just some concrete examples?
Yeah. I mean, I guess one of the areas that I think has been really exciting is the connection between brand and conversion as well. So we've got a number of clients that, in particular with like CPG or retail, where the challenge is really not just creating the brand engagement and creating an activation, but actually creating value to a user who interacts. And the offset of that has been, like as an example, like on average about 90% increase in conversion using an interactive digital human. So those are pretty cool. And I use the example of Deutsche Telekom. I really like this one because I think telecommunications is a good example of something that is heavily commoditized, but actually has a level of complexity in it. And so sometimes you think about any interaction where you make it fun and engaging, but also help people have confidence that they're making the best decision for themselves. And it's not just conversion. If you take that one as an example, they did 4 times higher upsell, like iPhone plans and increases on other accessories, all those kind of things as well. So I think that's pretty exciting, I think, as we think about how the metaverse is going to change some of those dynamics.
I'm going to add a little bit of those. I'll get some voice-specific ones. Where's my mic? I'll speak louder. Is you think about those, like just for film, entertainment, podcasting, there's a lot of different ways that brands are sitting, downloading, hearing an English version. Being able to make very personalized experience is, it's key. It's on. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Sorry about that. Technical malfunctions.
I know we've been touching on it a lot, but I'm going to pass this around. No problem. Yeah. No problem. Now we got one each.
Okay,
there we go. We've been touching on it throughout the whole chat, but different mediums come and go in popularity: radio, television, internet. How, again, just in broad strokes, how disruptive will the metaverse be to just the whole marketing, advertising ecosystem? I'm just asking you to make these really strong predictions now, but
I won't go disruptive, and I'll say more opportunistic for the communities. It's there today, but like any new channel, you're going into it and you're expanding this, and here's this wonderful way you can have a very personalized, and again, I've said it a lot, personalized and localized experience that's direct to those. That doesn't come without testing, and that doesn't come without continued effort and commitment to make the test work. And focus on, you're finding a new way that you're going to have to navigate, just like you were a new creative on television or a new dynamically inserted streaming ad. you're going out there with a test mind on how the best way I can go out and engage with my audience, you should look at the metaverse as no different, except it just gives you different dimensions in that equation. It's not just, CPM and audience and an engagement factor. It's, okay, well, who's coming in? Who am I engaging with? What do I know about this person? How can I adjust my messaging in a way that's somewhat programmatic in order to be able to communicate the most effectively way that I can with them? So it just gives you another dimension that really challenges you to think about how you want to be communicating your brand.
Hello. Here we go. So I think for me, I often think about the nature of, when I think about disruption, I think, we've got incredible personalities now showing how they can dominate the branding and product sector. So if you have like Kim Kardashian with makeup lines, we have, we obviously have Kevin Hart, Mr. Beast's burgers and chocolate bars, and you can see like how personalities can enter a market and like dominate, which is pretty amazing as we think about what does that look like as we go to the metaverse. And I believe that a personality-led strategy is going to be fundamental for any brand to connect with audiences in the future. And so if you don't have a strong personality, this is where virtual influencers and this type of technology starts to become so relevant. And I think the second part to that is I believe that we are moving into an age where content will be more personalized and everything will be more interactive than ever before. And what that really does is we know personalization is the number one effective way of connecting with our target audience. And so creating experiences where people feel like they're known and heard and everything is tailored around them, whether that be through conversation or even just the content that's been sent to them, I think that is the magic and the disruption, and that is where winners and losers will form in the future, I believe.
Yeah, and one more question for both of you. Throughout your career in this field, what's one thing that has come the furthest, the technology that's come the furthest, and what's one aspect of it that you think has the most room to grow still? I can give you time to think about that if you want, but
I mean, that's a great question. And it wasn't in our prep. So
what a buffer! What a buffer!
No, but I think synthetic voice is there today, where you can have very humanistic sounds and tonality and expression, and being able to really communicate either in a modality of text to speech or speech to speech, and being able to create a very kind of humanized voice. The avatars have come a number of ways to be able to have that. I think where we're going to see a lot over the next one is how we're going to start integrating all these today in a much more broader way. And especially because when you think about the metaverse today, what we're really talking about is a bunch of different little metaverses. Right. We're not talking about one kind of like ubiquitous, like, metaverse that, we're all going in and engaging in. Like
like meta galaxies is what I like to think of.
There you go, meta galaxies. Okay, I like that. So I think as that consolidation begins to happen over the years, it'll be very interesting to see how these different technologies come together and how are they being integrated. So, as you're going to these different worlds and these different worlds are consolidating, in real life, I expect principles of my protection of my identity and my associated assets. How do I make sure that that's still there in the future and carries over to these digital environments?
Yeah, I'm going to give the geeky answer, I think, because I'm a bit of a geek. So I think, naturally a lot of what we're seeing, the dependencies to make this even viable are really just the continuation of Moore's Law. And I think Moore's Law has really shifted into GPUs, the graphics cards that are really powering everything that we love about Web3, and even the way that we can generate content, the way that voices can be trained to be synthetic, to what we do in digital humans to look lifelike. And the technology can evolve in milliseconds to change what it's saying, speak a different language. All this is going to continue, because for the metaverse to be a reality, you still need a lot more compute for the worlds to be bigger and bigger, and the effectiveness of the things that we're imagining need a lot of horsepower. So I think that's been some of the biggest shift we've seen, is this shift onto GPUs.
It's a good geeky answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure if you can address this either, but is there a push to kind of get the metaverses to all join together, or to make one, you can take one character wearing one hat to one land to the next land? Is that is that any kind of push to do that? I don't know if you...
There's definitely, I mean, our company is connected into a number of major players in the space now where their standards are starting to be formed and discussed to make this a reality. But yeah, there's a long journey ahead.
A long ways to go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the version of ad tech that we've all seen before, where you're going into a new, what are the standards? What are we building against? Well, what are the DSP and SSP frameworks that we're going to be operating against so we can have consistency across that? It's going through the same journey here.
Right. Okay, well, I think we can jump to, you have a few key takeaways that I think we can jump to. If you want to take turns or walk us through them here.
Yeah, I mean, happy to. I mean, again, you probably heard it a lot from myself and Danny, but what you do today shapes your metaverse for tomorrow. And that's what it is. Because again, like, we're firm believers that it's consistency in your brand, in regardless of where you're at, either in real life or a digital environment. And that is key. So as you're thinking about, what's next for my brand, what am I working on next? We really got to start thinking about that other dimension that I was kind of alluding to earlier.
Yeah, I'm looking at point 2. I just think one of the key messages that we spend a lot of time talking to brands about is this ability to create interaction today on Web 2.0, moving into Web 3. I think the metaverse is exciting. It offers a huge potential and a focus for a lot of us, and it allows us to solidify a strategy towards there. But there is opportunity now to really start building interaction, and that has big payoff. So I think that's really exciting.
Oh, and lastly, synthetic media is key to ensure brand continuity across channels, including immersive environments. Again, it kind of encapsulates everything that we've been talking about today. Authenticity is still key, and especially in these digital worlds, because there is that notion, that you're talking to an avatar. That this is not a real person. So making sure that you're having an authentic ability to be able to have that dialogue is going to be key. And so just again, as it coming back to, you've got to start thinking about what your brand continuity is going to look like.
And Danny, is this the character you were mentioning earlier that you were talking about? I don't know if you want to elaborate on her a little bit more, but now that we can actually see her, like, what all went into each aspect of her.
Well, actually, it's a black hole with AI. You don't always know. So actually entering data into basically the black hole of machine learning, and then it produces variations, and you retrain until you have something that you quite like the look of. And that was the output. So, yeah.
All right. I think we have a couple minutes for some questions, if anyone has any. I see one hand. I see 2 hands there. Someone has a microphone here. We're all having microphone problems. You can go ahead.
This all was super interesting, so really thank you for that. Hadn't even considered a lot of this. My question is around your example of Jennifer Garner, and I think we would think about her a lot differently than we would think about an imaginary gecko, because she is a human that has her own identity, and how do we kind of convince her that this is something that she wants to do without it feeling like identity theft for her?
Yeah. No, I mean, I firmly believe that synthetic versions of these are going to be standard writers as we begin to move forward into these things. Because even just think about film, TV, or anything, getting Jennifer Garner to come back into the studio because they didn't have good sound for like these 1, 2 lines. Here's the ability, okay, well, we can just render this one out real quickly, be able to do that, versus trying to get her back, or worst case scenario, we'll just cut this scene that we don't have. So, I mean, I firmly believe that this is something that is, the industry as a whole is going to kind of rally around on that, because again, it's providing more opportunities for those. But again, to that same point, like, and Danny and I talk about this a lot, if you're a person of notoriety or working with someone for your brand that's doing that, we firmly believe that, these people, they should own their clone. Like, you should have, like, this is my Jennifer Garner's, this is my approved, synthetic clone of my voice. This is my approved synthetic avatar. And these are what I've had. So that way, if someone is wanting to engage with, this is something that she as an individual, as a person, has given her blessing against, and that she is in charge of, and she owns it, and then allows these other groups to be able to come in and use it on their behalf.
And she makes a lot of money
Yes.
not turning up.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we had another question over here. Yeah.
Yes, no, yes, there it is. We've heard a lot of folks say this morning that Web3 is now, it's happening now. So my question is though, who is Web3, for whom is it happening for? Because we know not everyone is using this space. So for whom and where, like when we're thinking about audiences that we might want to utilize for Web3. Sorry, I can hear the buzz. Oh, who are they and where are they right now?
I mean, it's definitely skewing younger now than some of the other traditional channels that's there. But again, this is where, I mean, again, YouTube was skewing younger many years ago as well, and now it's become more mainstream. So again, it's getting there and how you're going to start interacting, engaging with where they may be your customers today, but they may be your customers in 5 years. And so, how does that go and what does that look like?
I just want to give an interesting insight on that too. We did some work with AARP and for people over 65 years old, and we're using digital human interaction to help people through Medicare forms and things like that. We had over 90% preference rating on working with a digital human to do that versus any other technology. So I think as you think planning about your audiences going into Web3, there are still ways that you can be designing interaction that will then move into a metaverse world that's relevant to that audience in the future.
Yeah, and everything that we're kind of talking about today, don't need to think about it as this is just metaverse enabled. Like this is stuff that can be used right now. It can be deployed on your website. It can be your chat bot. I mean, it can be in your mobile application. But again, it's having that consistency from when you're in these, current Web 2 to going into a Web 3 environment, that you have that same continuity.
Is there any more questions? We got one in the back over there, I see.
I have a question for Sean while we're waiting.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Does your wife think you're more intelligent when she hears the British voice? Is that?
Most definitely.
I thought so.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. My question is, I can already imagine multiple applications for this in the marketing space, and the applications are limitless. But one of the things you mentioned is authenticity needing to come through. How do you define that? What does that look like in reality when you're creating or living in a synthetic world? How would you define authenticity in that space?
I've just tried in two buckets: sight and sound. From those. I think first, again, I was saying sound. Does this sound like person? Does it express emotion? Does it give sadness? Does it give consoling? Does it give happy? Being able to have those same emotion connection that you have with someone you're interacting with is one. And then the second being the sight. And again, as Danny and I both were leaning in heavy on the photorealism. But that I still think to a certain degree could at this point still be preference to the individual on what they are going to prefer to interact with. Do they want to interact with something that is more pixelated, or do they want that photorealism?
And I'm going to take another angle at it too, because when we've worked with a number of brands, I think it's also what's authentic to your brand and the personality of the brand. So for certain brands, I'm not going to name any, but to do some kind of cool kid with a backwards hat and like awesome kind of NFT setups and things, it doesn't align very well. And so it doesn't feel very authentic with the consistency of everything else they're doing. You'd have to do quite a big reinvention. Whereas maybe someone in a suit that's set up in a way that has represented their brand more to the liking of their current advertising and the kind of trend and the messaging that they've been focused on, I think is where they would need to, start thinking about in regards to creating that brand ambassador and that connection. And the other thing is, in any world where you're playing in hyper realism, like you need to still be clear around who you're talking to. There is a time, it's not now, but there is a time where you wouldn't know the difference between are you talking to the real person or their digital twin. And so I think we also need to be really smart around how we could even show that this is the approved, authentic version of their digital twin. So you're aware, but you're also aware that they have approved the usage of this as well.
I think we have time. Oh, I see a few hands, but I think we have time for one more, I think.
Hello, thank you for the panel. One question that keeps revolving around my mind is that they look very realistic. They might sound very realistic, but they're ultimately not human. And what I was thinking about is Veritas or UneeQ thinking about the consequences that it's going to take on the employment of those humans that would take care of tasks that these avatars will eventually be taken care of? And if so, what are you doing to mitigate potential unemployment and things that ultimately are going to impact humans at the end of the day?
See, I don't think this is going to impact humans. I think that there's this notion that we talk about that there's, AI is this whole cycle that is completely frictionless and humanless, that it's just going on and on. We view it as like there's always a human on the loop, that this person may not be the one that is going out there having these one-to-one interactions with this, but this person has given or licensed their voice, their image, and everything to be able to do that, which should be some financial incentives with that as well. But it's if you're running a call center or running any sort of thing and you're dealing with tens of thousands of input, like here's a wonderful thing where you can provide a great experience, as kind of Danny alluded to in his example, because they're not having bad days. They're able to have a consistent message. They're able to, stay consistent in how they're communicating with someone from those. So then it can free up the people that they can spend more time with the ones that they really need to be able to make sure that they're coming alongside with the more human example.
Yeah, I think automation is amongst us, and so there's disruption taking place as we need to automate, as our behaviors change, and that is the nature that we as humans have lived with for centuries and centuries, and longer. And so this is a technology that I think is, at the moment, if we think about the current period of time, I think is best suited to experiences that people value around having an interaction and have questions or want to get something from that. And so I think it's typically best suited in around product, sales, marketing, brand activation, those areas. Customer service, we already have today automation through chatbots and IVRs and all these things. Some are good, some are not. And yes, maybe at some point having a personality and a face to some of that technology makes sense, but I don't think that's the catalyst for removing people's jobs. I think automation's already doing it in those spaces.
Great. Okay, well, I know there's a couple more questions, but I think we're out of time. Danny, Sean, you'll both be around. Maybe people can find you and ask questions, send you an email.
Absolutely. And if you guys want to play around a little bit with one, to play Locate Kate. And if you get Kate, come stop by the Veritone booth, and Ashley and the team will, give a prize from those. But we just wanted to put together something that's fun to give you a chance to interact with someone here. So you can scan it, do it from your mobile, do it from your laptop, have fun with it.
It's actually, just real quick, it only took just over a week, so just under 2 weeks to put together. So give you an idea. I can hear it going already.
See, this is why we put it at the end of the presentation, not the beginning.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I think let's put our hands together for Danny and Sean. Thank you so much for this chat.